good to see you again, and hope you're enjoying today's readings. And I'm back in my office now. I don't know about you, but after I watched the one I did 2 days ago down the hall in our patio area at church, the table seemed to be shaking a little bit as I was sitting there speaking. So I wasn't getting seasick. I hope you didn't, but I thought, well, I'll come back to the office and do this here. And we move along in our readings today, and most of our reading today focuses on John chapter 7 and into chapter 8. And we have some interesting things going on here. But what really struck me through all of it today is the fact that people who lack faith are not able to understand and comprehend what Jesus is saying and doing. Much like we talk about with the parables and how without faith, they are just stories and you can't understand them. The truth is that without faith, you really can't understand anything, not just the parables. And I just jotted down a number of instances today where that became the case. First, it was his own brothers, who still at this point were non-believers, although at least one of them we know down the road, James, becomes a believer, who they felt he should go with them to Judea for the Feast of Booths, or the Feast of the Tabernacles. At this time, Jesus, as we are told, is walking through Galilee. And that's a nice way to describe his ministry at this point. And this feast occurs in the fall, late September, early October time frame. So we're several months removed from the feeding of the 4,000, but we're still about 6 months away from Jesus' time when he would walk into Jerusalem on that or ride into Jerusalem on that Palm Sunday and go through Holy Week, ultimately culminating with his death and resurrection. So we're still some months away from that. Jesus tells his brothers, you go on ahead. I am not just going to go along with you and partake of the feast like everyone else. Jesus has a plan, and he's going to follow it. And now that's just one example of people who, lacking faith, don't really understand what Jesus is about. Because they said you need to go to Judea, because Galilee, who would do anything there? If you really want to draw a crowd, you need to go to Judea. It could also, another group that I saw were the Pharisees, who were so blinded by their rigid application of the law that there was no way they could understand or even begin to attempt to understand what Jesus was saying. There was also the crowd who knew that this Jesus grew up in Nazareth, in Galilee, and therefore could not possibly be the Messiah, because they knew that the Messiah would come from Bethlehem. Probably should have done a little more checking to find out exactly where Jesus was born. There were others still who said, well, it can't be him anyway. He's not the Messiah, because when the Messiah comes, he's just going to instantly appear in a supernatural way, and Jesus didn't, so they knew that couldn't be him. Then there were others yet who said, well, he can't be the Messiah because he's not been trained under a known rabbi. In those days, being trained under a rabbi was kind of like getting a degree or having some sort of credential, and Jesus had none, therefore he couldn't possibly be the Messiah. All of these people were reflecting an inability to comprehend and understand and accept Jesus' teaching and why he came, because they did not have faith. And Jesus told his brothers to go on ahead. Now what's interesting here at this point is that he does show up during the feast, but he shows up unannounced on his own terms, and then ultimately is found in the temple teaching, which is typically where teachers would go. The rabbis would go to the temple teaching. And in the midst of this, interestingly enough, as we get to the beginning of chapter 8 of the Gospel of John, we have this account where the Pharisees drag this adulterous woman before Jesus, trying obviously to trick him and ask him what should be done with her. And now, a couple of points to make here. First of all, this account, this part of the text in the Gospel of John, all scholars agree, was not really written by John, and was inserted somewhere after the fact, because there are ancient Greek manuscripts which do not have this account in them at all. There are others who have inserted them. I think a couple of places I saw John 7 verse 36 right at that point. There are others, John 21, verse 24, immediately following there, and there are actually some others who have inserted it in the Gospel of Luke in chapter 21, verse 38. So, the reality is this was put there, and most scholars do believe that this was a true story, a true account, and therefore belongs in the Scriptures. It was just not something that was written by John here in this Gospel. And what we have to remember about that is that originally you had all these writings. The chapters and verses and organization of it were put together by human hands down through the centuries as the Bible was canonized and put together. But the bottom line is, in all of this, is that without faith we cannot see. And we can't even see the simple things, much less the difficult things. And I'm thinking of that in terms of how we approach those around us who are unbelievers. Rather than pray that God would give us the skill to somehow convince them, cajole them, debate them into faith, maybe what we really need to do is pray that God would make their hearts receptive and open to the Holy Spirit, because ultimately it will be the Holy Spirit who gives them the ability to comprehend the good news of why Jesus came and what he has done for them by his shed blood on the cross and his resurrection. So it is the sending of the Holy Spirit within one's heart that makes things clear, or at least allows us to understand a little bit of what Jesus is doing. So as we think about that, as I think about that today, I'm so thankful that God called me into the faith by the power of his Spirit, and that in that then, by the power of his Spirit, as I read this word every day, he continues to give me understanding little by little as I grow in my own faith and in my own discipleship. I pray that for you today, and look forward to talking with you again in a couple of days.